his relic speaks to his greatest gift, his voice. This is the jaw of St. Anthony, meant to preserve the essence of the saint's speech. The remains are housed in this ornate reliquary, lavishly adorned with gold and jewels.
Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the channel if you're new. And without wasting any time, let's get to the video.
In Christianity, there are many sacred items known as relics. But just because they're holy doesn't mean they're not disturbing. From an ornate gold statue housing the skull of Mary Magdalene to the lost coins of Judas Iscariot, and even a burial shroud with an intriguing secret. But what are these relics? How do they work? And what secrets do they contain? Welcome to Strange Christian Art. This episode, Dark Relics. Across many branches of Christianity, but especially in Catholicism, relics are sacred objects that preserve the remains of holy saints. Believers often use relics in their prayers, appealing to a saint to intercede for them before God. Today, relics come in all shapes and sizes, but the Church divides them into three distinct classes. First class, the actual physical remains of a saint. Second class, objects that were personally owned or used by a saint. Third class, items that have come into contact with either a first or second class relic. As we proceed down our list, we will see many different types of these relics, of course, some of which are quite literally the preserved remains of the saint. Alright, let's begin with our first relic.
So I have a question. Do Catholics pray to these relics, or do they just, I don't know how to say this, do they just use them as intermediaries, between them and, the Creator? I hope he explains, because this topic is very divisive. Some people call them idols, and many others, disagree. So I hope, I learn a bit more about this, so I can, get some kind of new perspective.
The incorruptible jaw of St. Anthony. St. Anthony of Padua is one of the most revered saints in Catholic history. A legendary preacher, his relic speaks to his greatest gift, his voice. This is the jaw of St. Anthony, meant to preserve the essence of the saint's speech. The remains are housed in this ornate reliquary, lavishly adorned with gold and jewels, above which rests an intricately carved golden halo that encircles the saint's head. Now, at first glance, it may even appear as though it has eyes. I certainly thought so. But this effect is just a reflection of the glass. Viewed from another angle, the illusion disappears entirely. It's certainly a haunting object, yet I find that there's something strangely beautiful about it, and the story behind it is just as mysterious. Saint Anthony was a preacher like no other. In one story, even the fish would gather to hear him speak. But his life was cut short. He succumbed to illness at the age of 35. 30 years after his death, his body was exhumed, and what was found there shocked everyone. According to legend, his jaw and tongue had been perfectly preserved. Many believed it was a sign that his voice had been blessed by God. For over 700 years, St. Anthony's incorruptible remains have been kept on display. Pilgrims from around the world continue to visit Padua to venerate his holy relic, often during sacred processions. Nowadays, St. Anthony remains the patron saint of lost things. So, if you ever find yourself searching for something lost, look no further than his sacred relic.
I don't know, if I was him, I don't know if I'd want people to be out here putting my body parts, on display like that. But maybe he would be okay with it. I don't know. And I wonder if, the legend is true, that his lower jaw was perfectly preserved. Maybe it was fabricated, maybe it was true.
Speaking of lost things, next we turn to one of Christianity's most enigmatic figures. The skull of Mary Magdalene. Beneath the crypt of a basilica in France lies a humble skull housed in a lavish gold reliquary. This is the head of Mary Magdalene, believed to be one of Jesus' closest companions. Her head is supported by 4 angels, their outstretched hands acting as a stand. Taken as a whole, it's a truly magnificent artifact. But why do I hear Dark Souls music? Beyond its stunning medieval craftsmanship, this relic holds another intriguing backstory, and possibly the secrets of the saint herself. While not counted among the 12 disciples, Mary Magdalene plays a crucial role in the story of Jesus. She was present at the crucifixion and among the first to witness his resurrection. Yet, little is known about what happened to her afterwards. According to one popular legend, she sailed to France to found one of the earliest Christian communities. These legends gained momentum when in 1279 a mysterious woman's skull was found in a tomb dating back to the 1st century. And of course, it didn't take long for people to speculate that this was the saint herself. In recent years, renewed attention has been given to this relic. 2 forensic artists have used the skull to create a 3D reconstruction of the person's face. The result was this, an image of a woman of Mediterranean descent. Could this be the face of Mary Magdalene? It's impossible to know for sure, but researchers are now working to create a full body rendering using other relics associated with the saint. Regardless, the relic of Mary Magdalene endures, forever preserved in this beautiful yet haunting reliquary.
Kinda reminds me of that one game, called Warhammer. I feel like the creator of that, story or that game, came up with the idea for some of the characters, using this. But it's interesting to see, how people, went from, finding a skull to believing it was of the saint. Is it an accurate, description of, Mary Magdalene, or is it something that, people at the time used, to promote their beliefs or something like that?
The heads of John the Baptist. This 3rd relic belongs to one of the most important figures in the New Testament, John the Baptist. According to the Gospels, John met a grisly fate. He was imprisoned and eventually executed by King Herod. His head was gifted to the king's daughter on a platter. Now, what happened to his head remains a mystery, but in the centuries that followed, not 1, but 4 different places have claimed to have found his grim relic. The most famous of these is kept in the Cathedral of Amiens in France. In a small chapel within the cathedral, a skull is enshrined on a gold platter, just like in the story. A nice touch. But it's not the only one. In San Silvestro in Rome, there's a skull fragment, complete with a wax head. In Munich, a separate head is kept on display, this time wrapped in a fine cloth adorned with pearls and jeweled roses. And the final alleged head? It's not housed in a church at all, but in a mosque. The Umayyad Mosque in Damascus, one of the oldest in the Islamic world, contains a shrine dedicated to John the Baptist, who is also a revered prophet in Islam. So, multiple heads, but only one John the Baptist. Although a multi-headed prophet would make for some pretty hardcore Christian art. It's an unusual predicament, but surprisingly common. During the Middle Ages, relics were in high demand, and there were always people willing to supply them. It's often joked that if you gathered all the alleged fragments of the true cross, you'd have enough wood to build a small forest.
Yeah, it makes sense that, a lot of these relics, were fabricated. Because behind a lot of things, humans do, greed is usually a big, part of it, Maybe for some of them, this was a way to attract, like congregates, and others, it was a way of popularizing their, beliefs and spreading their teachings to, different people out there by claiming that these relics, were genuine.
So far, we've seen 3 relics, but we're only scratching the surface. It's a miracle that any of these have actually survived. You see, there were times in history when they were nearly lost altogether. During the Protestant Reformation, many relics were viewed as idolatrous, seen to be contradicting biblical teachings against graven images. In those turbulent years, churches were looted and burned, Christian art was defaced, and countless relics were destroyed. In Catholicism, however, they were not seen to be a problem. In fact, the Church clarifies that believers do not worship the object, or even the saint it belonged to. Instead, relics are venerated in order for a saint to pray on their behalf. Think of them as a spiritual aid. Of course, the debate over relics has persisted for centuries, and will likely continue for many more. But few relics have garnered as much controversy as our next one. The Shroud of Turin. This 14-foot long linen cloth has had a remarkable history. If you look closely at the fabric, you'll see the faint outline of a person. When enhanced, the image reveals the figure of a bearded man with long hair, bearing scars that suggest he might have been executed. Many have speculated that this is the burial cloth of Jesus Christ. And it's not without reason. It closely matches many historic depictions of Jesus throughout art. Of course, if this relic really belonged to Jesus, it would be one of the most valuable and sacred relics in history. But while the shroud presents a compelling image, it's not without its detractors. Since 1988, several laboratories have used radiocarbon dating and have placed the cloth within the mid-14th century, well within the medieval era. This has led many to suspect it is a forgery, albeit an incredibly convincing one. However, the results have been hotly debated ever since. As recently as 2022, Italian researchers have used a pioneering X-ray technique to analyse a small segment of the shroud. Their findings suggest that the linen appears to date between 55 to 74 CE, a time frame that aligns closely with the historical period of Jesus' burial. When announced, these results caused a stir. Could this really be the face of Jesus? As of this video's release, further testing is ongoing, and not everyone is convinced. In the meantime, we'll have to await the results of future studies.
There have been many debates over this, and many more around what people think he would have looked like if he was around. And I feel like it's reasonable to think that he'd be similar, or he'd resemble the people he grew up around. Because if you're born, let's say in Africa, you'd look like the Africans in that region you were born in. And the shroud is very debatable, because it could have been anyone, But what do y'all think?
And relics like these were never meant to be feared. They were meant to be adored. And while today they may seem unsettling, the Christianity of old was far more comfortable with things that we might now consider dark. To me, I think these relics connect us to something unknowable, a far more ancient side of Christianity that the world has, in many ways, moved away from. And there are so many examples of this throughout history, just like a mysterious book written in 1552, filled with terrifying images, all warning of a coming apocalypse. But that's a topic for another video.
Yeah, that was a pretty interesting video. And if you want to see the original, the link will be in the description. And it's nice to see, how, people throughout history have viewed these relics. And I'm glad he explained that a lot of believers do not, worship these relics, and they're more like intermediaries, even if it's still a little confusing. It's nice to see how, these people think about these relics. And yeah, thank you all for watching, and see you guys in the next video.